I still remember the smell of disinfectant that clung to the hospital walls that night. Sharp, cold, and merciless. It mixed with the faint odor of the lilies my daughter brought me. Lilies that began to rot in their vase before I could even smell them properly. I lay there, weak and half asleep, staring at the ceiling's flickering light, unaware that outside those sterile walls, my entire life, everything I had built, loved, and protected, was being sold away. The house was more than brick and paint to me. It was the heartbeat of my memories. My late husband built it with his bare hands after our marriage. Each beam, each tile, held a piece of us. The dining room still had a faint burn mark from the night we accidentally dropped a candle during our 10th anniversary dinner. The staircase creaked exactly on the 4th step, just as it did when my daughter, Sophia, tried sneaking out as a teenager. It was our story, written in wood and plaster. When I fell sick and the doctors said I needed surgery, Sophia promised to handle everything. "Don't worry, Mama," she said, her soft hands squeezing mine. "I'll take care of the bills, the house, the errands, everything. You just focus on getting better." Her voice trembled a little that day, but I took it as worry. I never thought it could be guilt. Days in the hospital blurred together. I would wake up to the sound of heart monitors and nurses whispering. Sometimes I'd see Sophia sitting by my bed, scrolling on her phone, her face lit by that blue glow. Other times she wouldn't come at all, saying she was handling paperwork or meeting the bank about something important. I didn't ask. I was just grateful she was there. But one evening, a nurse came in holding a bouquet of roses and said, "These were delivered to your old address, Mrs. Harris. Luckily, the delivery boy remembered you were transferred here." I smiled faintly until the word "old address" settled in my mind like ice. Old address? I was still supposed to live there. I brushed it off as a mistake. Maybe she meant my home address instead of old. But something about her phrasing it that way kept echoing in my mind. After my surgery, I was kept under observation for another week. I remember asking Sophia if everything at home was all right. She smiled, too quickly. "Everything's perfect, Mama. I even repainted your room for when you get back." She avoided eye contact as she said it. I wanted to believe her. I did believe her, because mothers always want to believe their children. When they finally discharged me, it was a sunny afternoon. The nurse wheeled me out, and I felt a kind of joy I hadn't felt in months. I could almost smell my kitchen again, the faint cinnamon scent that lingered from my old spice jars. But Sophia drove me not toward home. She drove me somewhere else. I noticed we were heading away from Maple Street, our street, and toward the newer part of town. "Sophia," I said weakly, "you missed the turn." She kept her eyes on the road. "We're not going there, Mama. I moved you somewhere safer. The old house needed too many repairs, and it was just too much work for you." Something inside me snapped awake. "Moved me?" I asked, my voice rising. "What do you mean, moved me?" She finally looked at me, her face pale. "I sold the house, Mama. I sold it 2 weeks ago." For a moment, I thought the anesthesia was still clouding my head. My ears rang. "You what?" "It was for your own good," she said quickly, like she had rehearsed the line. "You were in the hospital, and the bills were huge. The house was old, and the buyers were offering a good price. I couldn't just sit and watch us drown in debt." I felt my chest tighten, not from my stitches, but from something deeper. "That house was your father's gift to us," I whispered. "How could you—" "It was my decision to make," she interrupted, her tone suddenly hard. "I had the power of attorney, remember? You signed it before surgery. I did what I had to do." Power of attorney. I remembered the form, a thick stack of hospital papers she brought for me to sign, saying they were just for insurance. My trembling hands had trusted her. I never imagined my signature would be the weapon she used against me. When we reached the new place, a small apartment near the highway, it felt nothing like home. The walls were bare, the furniture unfamiliar. A few boxes sat in the corner, labeled in her handwriting, "Mama's things." I opened one. Inside were just some clothes, a few photographs, and a chipped teacup. The rest, decades of memories, gone. That night, I couldn't sleep. I kept seeing my husband's face, the way he used to polish the porch railings every Sunday. I could almost hear his voice asking, "You let her sell it?" I wanted to scream that I didn't know, that I trusted her, my daughter, my only child. In the following days, I pretended to settle in. I smiled when she visited, acted grateful when she brought groceries. But inside me, a quiet storm was forming. I needed to know why. Why did she really sell it? Was it truly about money? Or was there something else, something darker? Then, one afternoon, while Sophia was at work, I noticed an envelope sticking out of her handbag. My eyes caught the name printed on it, Harrington Realty. My heart pounded. That was the agency that handled expensive property investments downtown, not ordinary home sales. I shouldn't have looked. I knew it. But something stronger than guilt pushed me. I pulled out the papers and unfolded them. My hands trembled. It wasn't just a sale agreement. It was a transfer deed for 2 properties. One was our old home. The second was an adjacent plot that had been in my husband's name. Together, they were worth 3 times more than what she told me. And at the bottom, her signature, alongside that of a man I didn't recognize. A man whose name I would soon learn. A name that would unravel every lie she had told me and expose a secret so cruel, it would make me wish I'd never left that hospital bed alive. That night, I didn't close my eyes once. I lay still on that narrow bed, staring into the darkness, feeling it crawl over me like a cold mist. Every sound in that apartment felt strange. The hum of the fridge, the ticking of the wall clock. It all belonged to someone else's life, not mine. My house had its own rhythm, its own soul. This place was just hollow. At dawn, I sat by the window, clutching that transfer deed, my hands trembling. The man's name printed beside Sophia's was Ethan Rowe. I didn't know him. The address on the document matched our family home, and yet the price listed was far less than what that property was worth. It wasn't a sale. It was a bargain, almost a gift. And I couldn't understand why my daughter, my flesh and blood, would practically give away our legacy. When Sophia came home from work that evening, I watched her quietly. She was humming, pretending everything was normal. "How are you feeling today, Mama?" she asked, placing a plastic bag of groceries on the counter. I wanted to scream. I wanted to hold that paper up and shake it in her face. But instead, I just smiled faintly and said, "Better." Sometimes silence is louder than anger. I decided to wait, to watch. The next morning, when she left for work, I dialed the number of Harrington Realty printed on the letterhead. My voice quivered as I asked to speak with someone about the Maple Street property. The woman on the other end paused for a moment. "Oh, yes," she said politely. "That property was recently sold. Mrs. Sophia Rowe handled the transaction." My heart skipped a beat. "Rowe?" I repeated. "Yes, ma'am. She completed the purchase with her husband, Mr. Ethan Rowe. Lovely couple. I remember them clearly." My breath caught. Husband? Sophia wasn't married. Or at least that's what she told me. I hadn't met any Ethan, never even heard his name. After the call, my hands shook so badly I dropped the phone. It bounced on the floor, the sound echoing in the tiny apartment. I stared at the wall, trying to piece together years of trust, years of laughter, into something that made sense. And nothing did. I went digging through the boxes she brought from the old house. Most were just junk, torn photo albums, old utensils, a few of my husband's shirts. But tucked between some papers, I found an envelope, sealed with Sophia's handwriting. It wasn't addressed to me. It simply said, "For legal reference." Inside, there was a printed marriage certificate. Sophia Harris and Ethan Rowe. The date was from over a year ago. She had married him secretly. My own daughter, who told me she was too busy for relationships, had married a man I never met. And now, together, they owned the very home her father built for us. I sat there for hours, clutching that paper, rocking back and forth, whispering to myself, why didn't she tell me? Why? By evening, she returned, cheerful and tired. "Mama, you didn't eat your lunch again," she said, opening the fridge. I turned slowly toward her. "When were you going to tell me about your husband?" She froze. Her hand, reaching for the milk, stopped mid-air. The color drained from her face. What? I placed the certificate on the counter. The paper fluttered slightly under the ceiling fan. She looked at it, then at me, her lips parting but no words coming out. "So it's true," I said, my voice trembling. "You sold the house to him, your husband. You lied to me, Sophia." Tears welled in her eyes, but they weren't the kind that came from guilt. They were from fear. "Mama, please, it's not what you think." "Oh, really?" I snapped. "Then tell me what I'm supposed to think. You sold our family home, behind my back, while I was lying in a hospital bed thinking you were fighting for me. You took my trust, my memories, my husband's legacy, and handed it over to a stranger. For what?" She wiped her tears and whispered, "For survival." I laughed bitterly. "Survival? You call that survival? You call betrayal survival?" She took a deep breath, her face pale. "Mama, there are things you don't know. Ethan, he's not just some man. He helped me when you were sick, when the hospital demanded payment up front. I had no one else. The insurance didn't cover half the bills, and the bank was threatening to seize the property for the loan. I didn't know what else to do." Her voice broke mid-sentence, but my anger burned too deep. "So you married him for money?" She didn't answer. She just lowered her eyes. That silence told me everything. Over the next few days, she grew quiet. She started leaving earlier, coming home late, her phone always glued to her hand. Sometimes she'd step out onto the balcony to take calls, whispering things I couldn't catch. I'd see her face illuminated by that cold blue light again, her expression tense, worried. One night, I couldn't help myself. When she went to bed, I carefully took her phone from the nightstand and tiptoed to the kitchen. The screen was locked, but as if fate wanted me to know the truth, it buzzed with a new message. It was from Ethan. The message read, "The old lady doesn't suspect, right? Once the renovation's done, we'll flip the property and get out clean. Don't mess this up." My heart stopped. My knees buckled. The phone slipped from my hands, clattering against the tiles. She came running from her room, her hair a mess. "Mama, what are you doing?" I looked at her, tears streaming down my face. "He called me the old lady, Sophia. Is that what I am to you now? Just a burden to get rid of? A problem to solve?" She tried to grab the phone, but I held it close. No, Mama, it's not like that. You don't understand. He promised. Promised what? I yelled, the sound of my voice surprising even me. That he'd make you rich if you sold your own mother's soul? Her lips trembled and she whispered, "It wasn't supposed to go this far. I just wanted to save us. But then he wanted more. He found out about the second property. He said if we transferred both, he'd double the offer and settle all the debts. I swear I didn't know he planned to flip them for profit." "Profit?" I whispered. "You sold my memories for profit?" She tried to reach me, but I stepped back. For the first time in my life, I felt like I was staring at a stranger wearing my daughter's face. That night, I packed a small bag, just my husband's watch, a framed photo, and that cursed deed. I didn't know where I was going, but I knew I couldn't stay. Not under the same roof as the person who had betrayed me so completely. As I closed the door quietly behind me, I heard her sobbing in her room. Her cries echoed down the hallway, but I didn't turn back. Because sometimes, love has to die before truth can breathe. And deep down, I knew this wasn't the end of her lies. There was something else she wasn't telling me, something even darker that connected her, that man, and the night I nearly died in that hospital bed. I walked through the cold night like a ghost, my thin shawl pulled tight around my shoulders. Every step echoed against the empty streets, every breath a reminder that I no longer had a place called home. The air bit into my skin, but the pain inside was worse. Betrayal doesn't burn. It freezes. It crawls into your chest and sits there, heavy and quiet, until you can't tell whether you're breathing or breaking. I ended up at the old park near the edge of town. My husband and I used to bring Sophia there when she was little. She'd run toward the swings, her tiny hands gripping the chains, calling, "Push me higher, Papa!" And he always did. I could still see him in my mind, his strong hands, his laughter echoing through the trees. He would have never believed what she'd done. When the sun began to rise, I found myself sitting on a bench outside the old chapel. The wooden doors were half open, and the smell of wax candles drifted through the air. I went inside and sat at the back pew, clutching my purse. For the first time in years, I prayed. Not for health, not for peace, but for truth. I wanted to understand why. As I sat there, lost in thought, a familiar voice startled me. "Mrs. Harris?" I turned and saw Mr. Bennett, an old neighbor from Maple Street. His kind eyes softened when he recognized me. "We've missed you on the block," he said. "It's not the same without your rose garden." I smiled faintly. "I don't live there anymore." "Oh, I know," he said sadly. "The new owners have been renovating like mad. Stripped the place bare. I thought you'd approved all that." My stomach dropped. "Renovating?" "Yeah. Started a week after you went into the hospital. They tore down the front porch and the backyard fence already. That young man in charge, what's his name? Ethan, I think. Real bossy type. Didn't even let anyone near the property." I gripped the pew until my knuckles went white. A week after I went into the hospital. That was when I was still unconscious from surgery. She'd already made the deal by then. I thanked Mr. Bennett and left the chapel, my mind spinning. I needed to see the house one last time. Maybe part of me still believed I could reason with her, that there was something salvageable in this madness. That afternoon, I made my way back to Maple Street. My heart thudded in my chest as the old house came into view. Or what was left of it. The porch was gone, the curtains torn down, and the sound of drills filled the air. A large truck was parked outside with a sign that read, Rowe Construction and Realty. So that was it. It wasn't just a sale. It was a scheme. They bought homes cheap from vulnerable people, flipped them, and sold them for profit under the same company name. And I, the trusting old fool, had been their perfect target. I crept closer to the fence, hiding behind a tree. The front door was wide open. Workers moved in and out, carrying wood and tiles. Then I saw him, Ethan. Tall, smug, phone pressed to his ear. His voice carried across the yard. Yeah, once this place is done, we'll list it for triple. The old woman's off our backs. Sophia's keeping her busy. I couldn't stop the tears that blurred my vision. My daughter was keeping me busy, as if I were a task, a nuisance. When I turned to leave, one of the workers spotted me. Hey, you're not allowed here, he shouted. I ran before anyone could stop me, my heart pounding so hard it hurt. I didn't know where else to go. So I went back to the apartment. Sophia wasn't home yet. Her coat was gone, her phone charger missing. I waited on the sofa, my fingers tracing the edge of that cursed deed. Hours passed. When she finally returned, her hair was disheveled and her eyes red. Mama, where have you been? I've been looking for you everywhere, she said, rushing toward me. I looked up slowly. You've been looking for me? Or making sure I don't ruin your little plan? Her face went pale. Mama, please. I went to Maple Street, I said softly, my voice shaking. I saw him. I heard him. You and that man destroyed our home. You sold your father's memory for money. She collapsed onto the chair, covering her face. You don't understand, Mama. He promised it was just temporary. He said we'd buy it back after he flipped it. Buy it back? I laughed bitterly. Do you even hear yourself? She looked up, her face streaked with tears. I made a mistake. I thought he loved me. He told me everything he was doing was for us. That once the deal was done, we'd be rich. But now, he's changed. He doesn't answer my calls. He took the money and vanished. Her words hit me like a gust of cold wind. Vanished? She nodded, trembling. He withdrew all the funds from our joint account yesterday. I tried going to his office. It's empty. He's gone, Mama. He's gone. I stared at her. For the first time in weeks, her eyes looked real, raw and terrified. She wasn't the schemer anymore. She was the one who had been played. She buried her face in her hands and sobbed. I didn't mean to hurt you. I just wanted to save us. He said it was legal, that you'd never know, that it was the only way. And when I found out what he'd done, I didn't know how to fix it. I wanted to hate her. I wanted to scream at her until my voice broke. But as I watched her cry, my child, my only child, I saw the same scared girl who once hid behind me during thunderstorms, the same trembling little hands that used to hold mine. But forgiveness doesn't erase truth. Sophia, I said quietly, you have to tell the police. She looked up, startled. What? No. If I go to the police, I'll be arrested too. I signed everything. I helped him. They'll say I'm part of it. And if you don't? I asked coldly. He'll get away with everything. Your father's house, our land, everything. He'll ruin more lives like ours. You let one wolf in, and now you're afraid of the cage that will hold him. She shook her head, her lips quivering. I can't. I can't go to jail, Mama. Something inside me hardened. The woman who once protected her through every fever, every heartbreak, every mistake. She was gone. What stood there was someone else entirely. That night, while she cried herself to sleep, I made a decision. If she wouldn't tell the truth, I would. I took the documents, every paper she'd hidden, and left before dawn. My husband once told me, the hardest part of motherhood isn't raising your children, it's watching them fall, and knowing you can't catch them anymore. But he was wrong. Sometimes you can catch them. You just have to risk breaking your own bones to do it. And I was ready. Because I was going to find that man, expose everything he'd done, and take back what was ours. Even if it meant destroying the last fragile piece of love I still had for my daughter. The morning I left with those papers, the city was still asleep. A light fog hung over the streets, and every footstep sounded heavier than it should. I clutched the folder against my chest like a shield. Inside were the deeds, the marriage certificate, the fake transfer forms, all the evidence of Sophia and Ethan's betrayal. But this wasn't just about property anymore. It was about dignity, justice, and the truth that had been stolen from me. I didn't know where to begin, but my gut told me to go to the bank first. The documents listed the payment transfers and account numbers, something that might lead me to Ethan's trail. At the branch, I asked to speak to the manager, an older gentleman named Mr. Collins, who had handled my husband's accounts for years. He blinked when he saw me. "Mrs. Harris, it's been a long time. I was sorry to hear about your illness." I nodded weakly. "Mr. Collins, I need your help. It's about my house." When I showed him the papers, his eyebrows furrowed. This account isn't in your name, ma'am. The transfer was made to a business account under Rowe Development Group." He looked at the screen, then back at me. "The funds were withdrawn completely 3 days ago." "Withdrawn where?" I asked. He hesitated, lowering his voice. "Transferred to an offshore account, Cayman Islands." I felt my stomach drop. Ethan hadn't just run away. He'd planned it. Every move, the marriage, the sale, the timing. He had played my daughter like a violin, and she'd danced to his tune willingly. "Is there any way to trace him?" I whispered. He sighed. "Not easily, ma'am. But if you file a formal fraud complaint, the police might coordinate with the Financial Crimes Unit." I thanked him, clutching the folder tighter. As I stepped out of the bank, a gust of wind caught the edges of the papers, scattering one onto the pavement. When I bent to pick it up, something strange caught my eye. A signature, Ethan's. But underneath it, faintly printed, was another name. M. Rowe. For a moment, my breath froze. M. Could it be a relative? A business partner? Something told me that whoever that was, they weren't innocent either. I went straight to the police station, my heart pounding. The officer at the desk looked skeptical at first. "So your daughter and her husband sold your property while you were in the hospital?" "Yes," I said firmly, placing the documents in front of him. "He took everything, the house, the money, and my daughter's trust." He flipped through the pages, his expression changing from doubt to concern. "Ma'am, these documents are suspicious. The witness signatures are forged. And this M. Rowe, we've seen that name before." "What do you mean?" He leaned closer. "There's been an ongoing investigation into a ring that scams elderly homeowners. They find families with medical debts, convince the children to sell under false promises, and then disappear. We've been tracking them for months, but they move fast. If your daughter's involved, she may be their latest pawn. Or worse. My heart ached. Pawn or not, she had still betrayed me. But part of me hoped, just a little, that maybe she hadn't realized what she'd stepped into. "Can you find him?" I asked. He nodded. "We'll try, but I need your cooperation. And your daughter's." I hesitated. Sophia's tear-stained face flashed in my mind. "I'll bring her in," I said quietly. That evening, I returned to the apartment. The door was slightly ajar. My pulse quickened. Inside, the lights were off, but I could hear soft crying from the bedroom. I stepped closer and found Sophia sitting on the floor, surrounded by torn papers, photographs, and the broken frame of our family portrait. She looked up when she saw me, her eyes red. "Mama, I'm sorry," she whispered. "He called me this morning." My heart stopped. "Ethan?" She nodded weakly. He said if I go to the police, he'll release everything he has on me. The fake documents, the bank transfers. He said I'll go to jail for sure." He sounded angry, desperate. I walked over and knelt beside her. "He's bluffing, Sophia. He used you, and now he's trying to silence you. But it's over. I've spoken to the police. They're looking for him." She shook her head violently. "You don't understand. He knows where we live. He said he'd come for me." Before I could speak, a loud knock echoed through the apartment. Sophia froze. We stared at the door. Another knock, harder this time. I whispered, "Stay here." My legs trembled as I walked toward the door. I peered through the peephole. A shadowy figure stood outside, wearing a hooded coat. My heart hammered. "Who is it?" Silence. Then a low voice. "Mrs. Harris?" It wasn't Ethan. It was a man's voice, older, deeper. "Who are you?" I asked cautiously. The man exhaled. "My name's Mark Rowe, Ethan's brother." Sophia gasped behind me. "Brother?" she whispered. I opened the door slightly. The man looked tired, worn. His eyes were kind but troubled. "Please," he said softly. "I need to talk to you. It's about Ethan." We let him in. He sat on the edge of the sofa, his hands clasped together. "I've been trying to find you both. My brother's gone too far this time." I folded my arms. "Your brother ruined our lives." He nodded sadly. "I know. He's been doing this for years. Real estate scams, fake marriages, forged deeds. He's always been clever, but cruel. I tried to stop him once. He cut me off." Sophia stared at him. "You're saying he never loved me?" Mark shook his head slowly. "He doesn't love anyone. He uses people. He probably told you he was investing for your future, but he just wanted access to your mother's signature and the property title." Tears spilled down Sophia's cheeks. "He said he'd come for me. He said I'd regret everything." Mark sighed heavily. "That's why I'm here. He's dangerous now. The police aren't the only ones after him. He owes money to people far worse. I think he's planning to run, maybe tonight." I looked at him, realization dawning. "Where?" Mark hesitated, then pulled a crumpled paper from his pocket. "He's supposed to meet someone at the old train yard by midnight. It's his usual escape route." Sophia's eyes widened. "Mama, no. Don't get involved, please." But I stood up. My hands no longer trembled. "He stole my home, my peace, and my daughter's life. This ends tonight." Mark looked at me, startled by the firmness in my voice. "You're not going there alone." I'm not afraid anymore, I said quietly. He took everything from me. There's nothing left to fear. Sophia reached out, gripping my hand. If you go, I'm going with you. I looked at her, the daughter who had betrayed me, who had broken me. And yet, beneath it all, she was still mine. Then we go together, I whispered, because some battles a mother can't fight alone. And as the night crept closer, I knew this would be the night that buried the truth, or finally set it free. The wind that night felt different, sharp, restless, and cold enough to sting my cheeks, the kind of cold that carried warnings. The old train yard was about a mile from the apartment, and every step toward it felt heavier than the last. Sophia walked beside me, her coat wrapped tight, her eyes darting around like a frightened child. Mark led the way, his flashlight cutting through the mist that rolled along the tracks. The air smelled of rust and oil, and the ground was slick with dew. Rows of abandoned freight cars stood like silent witnesses to whatever was about to happen. The place was dead quiet, except for the faint hum of the city far behind us. Mark stopped suddenly and turned to us. If he's here, stay behind me. Ethan's unpredictable when cornered. I nodded, gripping my purse where I'd hidden the documents. My heart pounded like a drum in my ears. This wasn't just about property anymore. It was about truth and closure, and maybe even forgiveness. We walked deeper into the yard, past a broken fence and a row of shipping containers. That's when I saw him. Ethan stood under a dim light, talking on his phone, his voice low but impatient. Even from a distance, I could recognize that arrogance in his stance, the same confidence that fooled my daughter and destroyed my home. A black duffel bag lay by his feet. Mark motioned for us to stay back. He stepped forward slowly. Ethan. Ethan spun around, his eyes narrowed. Mark? What the hell are you doing here? Mark took another step closer. It's over, brother. You need to stop running. Ethan laughed. Stop running? That's rich, coming from the saint who pretends he doesn't profit from my deals. You think I don't know you've been following me? Mark's jaw tightened. You crossed the line this time. You conned an old woman and her daughter. You can't fix this with money. Ethan's gaze shifted past him and landed on me. For a second, his smirk faltered. Well, look who finally crawled out of her hospital bed, he sneered. Mrs. Harris, still fighting ghosts? I stepped forward before Mark could stop me. You destroyed everything I had, I said, my voice trembling but loud. That house wasn't just wood and paint. It was my life, my husband's memory, my family's roots. He shrugged. Sentiment doesn't pay bills, sweetheart. I gave your daughter a chance to live better. You should be thanking me. Sophia's voice cracked from behind me. You lied to me, Ethan. You used me. You said we'd buy it back. He turned to her, his tone dripping with mock pity. Oh, Sophia, you were so easy, so desperate to be loved. I barely had to try. I saw her flinch, her hand covering her mouth as tears streamed down her cheeks. That was the moment something inside me snapped. The quiet, obedient woman who'd trusted everyone, who'd kept her pain neatly folded away, that woman died right there under the dim glow of the train yard light. I took a step closer. You're going to pay for what you did. Ethan laughed again, louder this time. Pay? You think the police scare me? They can't touch me. You signed everything willingly, remember? Your daughter's signature sealed it. You don't have a case, old woman. Maybe not, I said quietly. But they have your brother's statement. His face darkened. What did you say? Mark pulled out his phone. I've already called them, Ethan. They're on their way. Ethan's eyes flicked toward the duffel bag, and I realized he was planning to run. He lunged toward it, but Mark grabbed his arm. They struggled, grunting, the sound of boots scraping against gravel. The bag spilled open, and stacks of cash tumbled out, fluttering across the ground like fallen leaves. "Stop!" I cried, my voice echoing. Sophia rushed forward, trying to separate them. Ethan shoved her hard, too hard. She stumbled backward, tripping over a rail and hitting the ground with a cry. I ran to her, dropping to my knees. "Sophia!" She groaned, clutching her shoulder. "I'm okay," she whispered, but her voice was weak. When I looked up, Ethan had broken free. He was running toward the far end of the yard, the duffel slung over his shoulder. "Ethan, stop!" Mark shouted, chasing after him. I helped Sophia to her feet, and together we followed. The world seemed to blur, the clang of metal, the crunch of gravel, the distant wail of sirens growing closer. Mark caught up to Ethan near an old freight car. They struggled again, and I saw something glint in Ethan's hand. A knife. "Mark!" I screamed. Ethan slashed at him, the blade catching Mark's arm. Mark grunted in pain, staggering back. But as Ethan raised the knife again, Sophia did something I'll never forget. She ran forward and threw herself between them, shoving Ethan backward. He stumbled, lost his footing, and fell hard against the metal steps of the freight car. The knife clattered away. For a moment, there was silence. Ethan lay motionless, the sirens drawing closer. Mark dropped to his knees beside him, feeling for a pulse. "He's breathing," he muttered, blood dripping from his own arm. "Barely." I stood there, frozen, the fog swirling around us. Sophia was shaking, her face pale. "I didn't mean to—" I grabbed her hands. "You saved us," I whispered. "You saved yourself." The flashing lights appeared at the edge of the yard, blue and red slicing through the mist. Officers rushed in, shouting commands. Mark raised his good hand, calling out, "Over here!" They swarmed around Ethan, cuffing him, collecting the scattered cash, taking statements. I watched them load him into the back of the police car, his head lolling to the side. For a second, his eyes met mine through the window, cold, empty, defeated. And just like that, it was over. Hours later, we sat in the sterile glow of the police station. The detective told us Ethan would be charged with fraud, forgery, and attempted assault. They found enough evidence in his bag to reopen several old cases. Mark's statement sealed it. When we finally stepped outside, dawn was breaking again. The first light stretched across the horizon, soft and golden, washing over the cracked pavement. Sophia stood beside me, silent. Her eyes were swollen from crying. "Mama," she whispered, her voice trembling, "I don't deserve your forgiveness." I turned to her slowly, my heart heavy but softer than before. "No," I said, "but I'll give it anyway, because I can't let hate be the last thing I feel for my own child." She buried her face in my shoulder, and I held her close. For the first time in months, I felt something close to peace. The house was gone, the memories broken. But maybe, just maybe, we could build something new. Not from wood and nails, but from truth. As the morning sun warmed my face, I whispered to myself, home isn't always a place. Sometimes it's a moment when your heart finally forgives. But deep down, I knew there was still one final truth left untold. One secret that would make everything we'd been through take a darker, more tragic shape. And that truth was waiting for me in the very documents I thought I'd already read. The police released us later that morning, after endless questions, signatures, and statements. Mark had his arm bandaged, and Sophia clung to my side as if letting go might make her vanish too. We walked out into the soft sunlight, the world strangely calm after a night that had felt like a lifetime. But something inside me still stirred uneasily, a restlessness, like a book with its last page missing. I couldn't shake the feeling that the story wasn't finished, that there was something I hadn't yet seen. When we returned to the apartment, the place looked smaller than before. The curtains still swayed with the morning breeze, the coffee cup still sat half-filled on the counter, but everything felt foreign now. Sophia sat down on the sofa, exhausted. Mark leaned against the wall, pale but steady. "You should rest, Mrs. Harris," he said softly. I shook my head. "Not yet." I reached into my purse and pulled out the folder, the same one I'd carried to the train yard. Some of the papers had gotten damp, the corners wrinkled, but they were all there. I started sorting through them, one by one. And that's when I saw it. A document I hadn't noticed before, a thin, faded letter tucked between two property deeds. The paper looked older than the others, the ink slightly blurred, like it had been folded and unfolded too many times. My name was typed at the top, to Mrs. Margaret Harris. My breath caught. "What is this?" I whispered. Sophia looked up, confused. "What's wrong, Mama?" I unfolded it carefully, my fingers trembling. The letter was dated almost 8 months before my surgery, long before Ethan had entered our lives. And it wasn't from him. It was from a law firm. The first line hit me like ice water. "This letter serves as confirmation of the transfer of ownership of the Maple Street property from the estate of the late Henry Harris to the sole surviving heir, Ms. Sophia Harris." My husband, Henry. I stared at those words, my vision blurring. My husband had transferred the property to Sophia before he died. Quietly, secretly, without ever telling me. Mark frowned. "What does it mean?" I handed him the letter. "It means," I said slowly, "that the house was never legally mine after Henry passed. He'd already given it to her." Sophia's face drained of color. No, that can't be. Papa would never." But I recognized his signature at the bottom, that strong, slanted writing I'd seen on birthday cards, insurance papers, and love letters. It was his. There was no mistake. The room felt colder suddenly. I sank onto the chair, the letter shaking in my hands. "He gave it to you," I whispered. "You didn't steal the house, Sophia. You sold what was already yours." She blinked, tears streaming down her face. "But why didn't he tell you?" That question echoed in my head, loud and cruel. Henry had always been secretive about finances. After his heart attack, he'd grown distant, spending hours in his study. I thought he was sorting things for our future, not rewriting our past. I could almost hear his voice in my memory. "If anything happens to me, take care of Sophia first. She's still so young." At the time, I thought it was fatherly love. Now I wondered if it was guilt, if he'd made choices I wasn't meant to understand. Mark rubbed the back of his neck. "Maybe he thought he was protecting you both," he said gently. "Maybe he didn't want the responsibility to fall on you if something happened." But I knew better. Henry had always treated Sophia like a fragile flower, and me like the gardener who had to keep her alive. He must have thought she needed security more than I did. I sat there in silence, the truth weighing heavier than the betrayal ever had. All this time, I'd hated her for selling my house. But it was never mine to begin with. Sophia knelt beside me, her voice shaking. "Mama, I didn't know. I swear I didn't." If I'd known he gave it to me, I would have never—" I placed my trembling hand on her cheek. "I know, my child. You were foolish, but you weren't cruel. The cruelty started long before you." We sat there quietly, the sunlight creeping across the floor. For the first time in months, the silence between us didn't feel empty. It felt heavy, yes, but alive, like something healing slowly. Mark cleared his throat softly. "The police said Ethan's stable. They'll press charges in the morning. You don't have to worry about him anymore." But even as he spoke, I knew Ethan was no longer the ghost haunting me. It was Henry now. His absence, his decisions, his secrets. That night, after Mark left, I went to my bedroom and pulled out the old photo box I'd managed to save from the house. There was one picture that always comforted me, our wedding day. I looked at it under the dim lamplight, Henry's arm around me, his smile confident, protective. "You thought you were protecting us," I whispered, "but you only left us to destroy each other." Outside, the wind rattled the window pane, gentle but persistent. I closed my eyes, and for a moment imagined the creak of the old house, the faint smell of rain on the porch, the ghostly warmth of memories that no longer belonged to me. Sophia came in quietly and sat beside me. "Mama," she said, her voice barely a whisper, "I want to make things right. Whatever money the police recover, I'll buy a new place. It won't be Maple Street, but maybe it can still be home." I turned to her. Her eyes were tired but sincere. The kind of eyes that had finally learned what love costs when it's broken. "Home isn't a place, Sophia," I said softly. "It's the people who survive the storm together." She nodded, tears glistening. "Then we'll survive it, Mama." And for the first time in a long, long while, I believed her. Weeks passed, the investigation closed. Ethan was sentenced, and Mark disappeared quietly from our lives, leaving only a note that said, "Maybe now my brother's ghosts can rest." Sophia and I moved to a small cottage by the edge of town, a humble place with peeling paint and creaky floors, but it was ours. Together we planted new flowers in the yard, roses just like the ones Henry once admired. Sometimes I still dream of the old house. I see sunlight pouring through the kitchen window, smell coffee brewing, and hear Sophia's laughter from the stairs. In those dreams, nothing was ever lost. But when I wake up, I realize maybe that's the beauty of pain. It teaches you what truly matters once everything else is gone. One evening, as I sat on the porch, Sophia came out with 2 cups of tea. The sunset painted the sky in gold. She placed a hand over mine and whispered, "Do you miss it, Mama?" I smiled faintly. "Every day." She looked down. "Do you miss him?" I thought of Henry, of his secrets, his love, his silence. "Yes," I said quietly, "but I forgive him too." She leaned her head on my shoulder, and together we watched the sun sink beyond the hills. The wind rustled the roses, and for a moment everything felt still, whole. And though I'd lost the house that once held my heart, I realized something far greater had survived. The strength to rebuild, the courage to forgive, and the love that even betrayal couldn't erase. Because in the end, the home I lost was only made of walls, but the home I found was made of forgiveness.